Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters and viewers of Iqra TV, welcome back to part 2 of this very special one-off 2-hour edition of Real Talk. The reason why I've done this 2-hour one is because tomorrow, as I said at the first part, is a very important day in the history of this country. We're having an election in December which has not happened for many decades, and this election in particular is going to have a huge impact on the whole of this country, but particularly the black and minority ethnic community of the UK, but specifically, as far as I'm concerned, the Muslim community. Because depending on which party comes into power tomorrow, they will have that position of power that they will hold will have a real impact on the future of all of us living as Muslims in this country, this United Kingdom of ours. And that's why today's program, as last week's program, was specifically to encourage all our Muslim brothers and sisters, young or old, anybody who has the right to vote, to go out and exercise that democratic right to vote. We had Maulana Hayat Sahib last week, who said that it's absolutely incumbent on every Muslim to exercise this right to vote. Because if anything goes wrong, and we as Muslim communities face challenges, we will be questioned as to why we did not make the decision to go out and vote. And Mufti Yusuf Sahib today actually made it absolutely clear that it is a requirement for Muslims to go out and vote, because the whole future of the Muslim Ummah in this country is dependent on the outcome of this election as well. Now, there are some ulama who will say that Muslims should not go out to vote, and as Mufti Sahib said, there's been some talk around social media, but he has countered that to say no, it is absolutely a requirement to make sure that we go out and vote. I'm really pleased that today we've joined by another colleague, Anwar Fatima, who's come and joined us, and she's from Bradford as well. She's done quite a lot of community development in the past, over many, many decades, and well known to the people of Bradford. Anwar, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And just coming back, I mean, I mentioned at the first part that the Muslim community organisations like the MEND and the Muslim Council of Britain have put out there their views about which parties have responded to the challenges they've set, and they've given guidance to the Muslim community as to which parties they need to support. Now, I know Maulana Hayat Sahib mentioned that to you. So if you haven't seen that, please go online and check it out, because they set some very clear sort of proposals for the political parties, the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, etc., to actually address the issues that confront the Muslim community or that affect the Muslim community. And there's some very clear guidance as to who, in their opinion, you should vote for. I, as a representative of Iqra TV doing this program, cannot tell you who to vote for. What I can say to you is please go out and vote. But my guests, obviously, they're at liberty to share their personal thoughts as well. So, Anwar, before you joined us, we were talking about issues that confront the community in this part of the world. Not just the Muslim community, but the whole of the community.
Yeah.
So there's issues around equality and diversity, access to good education, the NHS, etc. And Inaya and Ishtiaq have made comments about how they've been decimated with the austerity program. Naid has talked about the austerity program having impact on education, etc. Now, in your view, what are the challenges that people face in this area, particularly the Muslim community, and how important do you think it is for people to go out and vote?
Well, firstly, Assalamu alaikum to everybody.
Salam.
I can only start from a personal point of view.
Yes.
So when I started having my family and they were young, we had so many services. We had Sure Start, we had an abundance of other community organisations that were supporting people in raising their families. And especially for our community and the ethnic minority, there were so many organisations, and that money that brought in development for people to integrate, people to have their rights, their voices heard, all this kind of stuff. There was massive grassroots sort of support, and since the Conservative government, that's slowly been completely taken away and eradicated. So now we're at a point where our communities are being criticised for not integrating and not really taking part in any sort of democratic or activism and assimilating into the society. Well, how can that be done when there's nothing to facilitate it and there's nothing to support it and to watch it grow? So my teen son, who's doing his A-levels now, when he was a baby, there were an abundance of programs like reading programs, like how to integrate via sports and stuff like that. If this is not provided, first of all, you're going to get a society of people who really are not guided as in terms of how to better their own situations. That can come through extracurricular activities, reading programs, you know, in terms of careers, where to go. Now, as a challenge, you know, you'd think that people would really be concerned about these kinds of things. And I'm so shocked that there are people in our community preventing people from going
your
out to vote.
background you mentioned was community development. Now I remember, you know, as part of ICRA TV, we went out to a boxing club in Bradford, and we did filming over there. And one of the things that kept coming back to us was that there's no youth facility at the moment in Bradford, which is actually sort of counterproductive because it's feeding into antisocial behaviour.
Absolutely.
Is that your view and your opinion?
Absolutely. Since we have been partaking in a lot of the events for Better for Bradford, we found that a lot of it is antisocial based because young people don't have a vice, they don't have a release, they don't have anywhere to go and seek advice, support, guidance ultimately. And as far as being a Muslim, what I remember of the Prophet ﷺ's final sermon is invest in the youth, because the youth are our future. And if we don't nurture them and we don't have that support and we're not holding people who are representing us to accountability and say, look, you're representing our voice, so let it be heard really. And I think as a parent and as holding on to my children's future in this country, I want there to be a future for them in this country. But if our voices are not heard and nothing is in terms of provisions and stuff like that, once they're educated, their natural inclination will be to migrate and go elsewhere. And then this country will be left with people who are educated, have good careers, but don't want to stay here. So
just coming back on, you touched on something that I briefly mentioned last week. I mean, are young people now disenfranchised from voting? Do they feel that it's pointless? I mean, the older generation, as you said, in our religiously voted.
Yes.
Right? They just went out and voted. But the young people who are professionals, who've been educated in this country, do you feel that that same zeal is still there? I mean, what do you feel, Ishtiaq? I mean, you come across young people quite often in your work, and Mufti Sahib, you do as well. I mean, do they have that same passion to go out and
young
vote?
People have been not nurtured, politically not nurtured.
Right.
All the spaces which my sister has outlined, in terms of the youth clubs, youth provision, grassroots kind of support and community services where young people could go and interact. Okay, all those have been decimated. The other kind of what I call the avenue of education in schools, the educations have been decimated. So everything which actually was about spaces, about amenities, about facilities and points of interaction, they have been wiped out. Something. So if the young people are not being nurtured, politically nurtured in terms of roles and responsibilities, nurtured in terms of their identity, then they are going to become disillusioned, they are going to become distant. And that's exactly what is happening. See, I talk to young people. They want to have a youth club. They want to go play a football. They want to have, look at the inner city areas where you're looking for open spaces where young people can go. How many neighborhoods actually have open spaces? No. Absolutely none. Where are those youth clubs? Whether they were run by the police, whether they were run by the youth services, where are they? None. There are no youth workers. There's no grassroots youth workers. No, something. So actually, we have stopped as a society investing in our young people. Okay, and what we are seeing, a widespread disillusionment amongst young people with the system. There's no connectivity, something, and politics and political parties and political structures are part of the society, but the society is not investing in these young people. So why should they have any connection? Why should they have any?
Do you think that's a deliberate attempt on the government's part to do that? So, you know,
I think
young
it's
people
about
can get
priorities. I think it's about
disenfranchised.
priorities. I think the government's priorities have been wrong. Okay, the money has been taken out of NHS, it's been taken out of education, it's been taken out of youth services, it's taken about the very basic amenities and facilities which we as the people require. That money has been diverted elsewhere, whether it's about defense, whether it's about Trident, whether it's about international politics or international roles. Actually, we as a society and the government of the society for the last 10-15 years have stopped investing in our communities.
Well, the first mistake that they made was introducing this responsibility to community and taking the responsibility from central government for educating our children. They knew they were going wrong. They didn't want to take responsibility for it, and so they had this new idea and say, we're going to give money to the people and these schools can come up. And
you're talking about the academies?
The academies.
Yes. Right.
So you're taking essentially full responsibility from central government, who are a responsible body. They have vested interests for a better society. But then again, you know, this massive poverty gap, because all the leaders, and you know, they've been going to Eton for how long? All these schools and the provisions for their educations are well maintained. But when it comes to wider society, you're taking
about
away.
The majority of the Conservative Party members.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
But there's
that
let's not make no jokes about this.
Right.
The majority of the Conservative Party have had private education and then gone on to higher education at very astute institutes, and that is not the choice for them.
So do you feel that because that is their background and their upbringing,
Absolutely.
do they really understand some of the issues that Ishtiaq has just mentioned about what it's like to be living in Bradford, in the inner city areas of Bradford, where there's, you know, poverty, under education, no provision for young people, no open spaces, etc. Do you feel that they have a grasp of that at all?
Absolutely. And most of these people, when they went off to university, had all their university fees paid for.
Right.
Our generation has had to take out from their own pockets. People are still paying off their university fees, you know, and for many generations to come, you know, we don't know how long this impact will have on future generations.
So how important is it for you that people tomorrow go out, you know, our viewers, the Muslim community, goes out and votes?
Well, I come from a family who have always voted.
Right.
We're very much Labour, never ever voted other than Labour. I think that coming from a family who take responsibility for the wider community as well, to say, look, we have come here, we've settled here now, this is our home, we're passionate about the environment, we're passionate about young people, we're passionate about the elderly. Bradford is one of the places where homeless people are coming from outside to have 3 square meals every single day. And that's not because we are, you know, have copious amounts of money. It's because we're a generous community. And despite being impoverished, we are still providing for the people who have less. Absolutely. So in our generosity, I think we need to hold on to that. And hold on to the ropes that tie us together and say, look, we want good for all of us, and we want to change, and we need to do that only through voting.
Just coming back to you two, obviously you, in your work, you know, Better for Bradford, you know, you come across a lot of young
Bradford
people.
for Better.
Sorry, Bradford for Better.
It's okay.
Bradford for Better. I mean, you come across a lot of young people as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you spoken to any of these young people about what's happening tomorrow? And
We've done that many times, haven't we? And every time we've gone
what sort of
out, we've tried
response?
to
What
encourage
sort of
them.
response do you get?
Well, when I've spoken to young people, I mean, just my own family members, they've lost hope. They've lost hope in the system.
Yeah.
They feel as though they've not been listened to. They feel as though they've not been heard. I mean, just like my nephew who's just recently graduated, he's got a degree in law, and he's actually now working, he's looking for work at Morrison's. He's looking for work anywhere because he can't find work. If, like Sister Anwar says, if you just, I mean, we've asked some of the MPs, we've invited them to Bradford, and we've asked them to come to Bradford and look at the state that we're living in. Homelessness, in poverty, everything is just crumbling. The whole, I feel as though the UK system it's all crumbling. It's in a
Let's-
it's in a
I wanna
mess.
Yeah.
read out
It's in a
some
complete-
quotes if I can.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
And come into this debate in terms of austerity and cuts and homelessness and the things that have been mentioned right now. The richest 1,000 people are worth currently right now, 1,000 people that are richest, they're worth 724 billion pounds.
Whoa.
724 billion pounds. That's
So
their worth.
The majority of the wealth.
In 2009, going back 10 years, that was 258 billion. So it's tripled nearly.
So the gap
Okay.
is getting wider and
So
wider.
rich people, richer
Yes.
are getting richer
Richer,
and
yeah.
richer, and poorer and getting poorer.
Mm.
Since the financial crash, and we talked about, I think it was before the break, where the banks were bailed out.
Oh,
and
the
God
sister who
knows
rang me,
where-
yes.
yeah. Since the financial crash, the wealth of the richest 1,000, has increased by 466 billion.
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
in the last decade.
Wow.
Mm.
The
And
average worker,
Yeah.
the Joe Bloggs on the street, has lost £18,500 in income since 2010.
So
Right.
true.
So
That's a child's
So we're-
austerity
so-
forever.
Okay,
Yeah?
I understand that.
I mean-
you know, the austerity has had a major impact
Indeed.
on everybody, particularly those who are
I'm
the
going to
poor.
just come to another
Yeah.
point there where they promised and they said that it'll take us 4 years to recover. But now they've been there for nearly coming up to 10 years. They want another 4 years.
Mm.
So how long do they want? 15 years
Mm.
to recover. But yet the NHS is not for sale. But then the redacted documents that Mr. Corbyn brought up, the questionings, the question time, the debates, the discussions, the sister talking about show start facilities, youth clubs, brother here talking about all these amenities that have been taken away.
Mm.
You're talking about parallel, separate lives that have been lived in societies where, if you look at generally Asian Muslim communities and certain areas in West Yorkshire, worse in terms of oral hygiene and healthcare, dentistry. You've got diabetes. You've got. It's not about the diets again. Some say it's about diets. You've got coronary heart disease, highest. In terms of treatment, in terms of the big C, cancer, and the facilities there, it's growing and growing and growing.
So the Muslim vote. I mean, Ishtiaq has said this. I've said this before. I've said this on many other TV programs as well. That the Muslim community in this country, wherever we settle, there are large parts. I mean, some people say there's about 35, 36 seats.
Indeed.
I say it's 100 seats.
Yes.
Where the Muslim people in this country can actually make a difference as to who governs the United Kingdom.
Yes.
If the Muslim Ummah can come to one conclusion, one unity, we can make a difference as to which party comes to power. And what is happening at this moment in time, we've seen the Hindu community proactively go out there, and the Hindu Council of Britain send out letters to all the Hindu community to say, do not vote for the Conservative Party, simply because the Labour Party supported the people of Kashmir, and they saw that as a threat to the Hindu community. So they brought the Kashmir issue into this country. And as I said before in the first part of the program, the Jewish community, or some members of the Jewish community, have used, conflated anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and have hit the Labour Party on the head of, over this, and beaten the Labour Party over it to say, don't vote for the Labour Party. Is this a deliberate attempt in your view, Ishtiaq,
Well, I mean,
by discrediting Islam and Muslims in this country?
there is absolutely nothing wrong for any community to align itself
Mm-hmm.
along political lines which best protect its identity and its interest.
Absolutely.
The Jewish community has done it, the Hindu community has done it, the Sikh community has done it. All other communities always look at themselves and say, okay, which political party in the present scenarios is actually in our interest.
Yeah, best.
And I think absolutely there's nothing wrong with the Muslim community actually making that decision, collective decision. Okay, something. So without being accused of being party political, I think as a community it is our right to look at ourselves and say, okay, this political party, in the present sense, is actually best in terms of our interest. And I think the Muslim community needs to do that. Perhaps it's too late for this election, but I think we need to do that, and we need to think around that. That's very important. The second thing is that we have seen increase in Islamophobia. We have seen increase in racism. And we have seen, I always say that the Muslim community actually faces triple disadvantage on the grounds of health, on the grounds of race, and on the grounds of class. Okay, it is a definitely. In terms of Muslim women, their disadvantage is even more multiplied. They are discriminated on grounds of faith, on race, on gender, as well as class. Something. Inequalities in the societies have actually increased. The gaps between rich and poor, the gaps between white and black, the gaps between Asian and Asian. And I think the society has become extremely divisive. And the reason for that is because everybody is actually trying to survive, and they think that someone else next door is actually taking their resources away from them. That is not the case. That is not the case. Okay, and my sisters will actually probably back me up on this one by saying is that we know that when economy is bad, there's lack of opportunities, there's a lack of investment, that racism and discrimination actually increases. Okay, and we have seen a spiral in Islamophobia, hate against Muslims. Okay, and I think as a community we have a right. We are right to be able to say, okay, as a community, we are part of this society. This is our home. Okay, equality, diversity, our faith, our integrity, our dignity, all are things that matter to us. And we are going to look at each political party and say, who is going to actually give us that protection, that access? That's one point. The other point is very briefly I want to say is that you will agree, sister, with me, that we have seen a deliberate attempt to dismantle all the structures where people could actually go to for recourse. Okay,
absolutely.
Something. Okay, I day after day I get people who say I feel discriminated. I think I've been denied opportunities. I've been denied access on the grounds of my race or my faith. I don't know where to go to. All the system and structures were there to support these communities, to readdress their discriminations and prejudice against them. All those have been dismantled.
Yeah, taking away funding from
precisely.
average Joe.
I just
wanted to why we're talking about this divide, this hate, this prejudice, this Islamophobia. Why? Where is it coming from? Where is it coming from?
The narrative is from the Conservative Party.
You look at our leader, our current PM.
Right.
What has he said? And I've got maybe a dozen quotes here in front of me, which I don't really want to share with our general public. I'm sure you're all aware of his comments about Muslim women in burqas and looking like letterboxes, or whether it's about the Quran, or whether it's about him talking about what is going on in these mosques and madrasas. When is someone going to get the 18th century Islam, a medieval bleep, bleep, bleep. I don't want to repeat anything else. But again, his comments on Islam and Islamophobic comments, I would say, are ridiculous, and he's yet failed to address any of these issues.
He's yet to apologize.
He's yet to apologize to
in fact,
anything about it.
One of the most important, earlier this week I was watching this program, the Victoria Derbyshire program, sorry, not this week, last week, and in the morning, and she had several guests just like ours, and there was one gentleman there, I think he belonged to the City, and I was really impressed with his comments. He says, I've been a Conservative all my life, but the day Boris Johnson made those comments about Muslim women and the burqa, I've decided I'm not going to support the Conservative Party anymore. And that comes from a white middle-class member of the City itself, I think he was, who said, those comments absolutely horrified me. And yet some of the Muslim community is still supporting
they are. And this is where you need a wake-up call, and we need to hold on tight to the rope of Allah, I would say, like it says in the Quran.
Right.
Put your faith, what's your identity, your culture, your religion, what's at stake here? It's all at stake.
Right.
These elections that are coming right now, it's a vital, it's crucial, it's essential, and we all need to do something about it.
Let me just remind our viewers, obviously this debate is very important, I think, to all of us. And anybody who wants to contribute, please feel free. You can follow us on Twitter, as I said before. You can watch it live on YouTube as well. But you can ring in and share your thoughts as well. 01274 214 299. Feel free to ring in and share your thoughts about why do you think Muslims should go out and vote, or they should not go out and vote, and who do you think is the best party that can provide all those things that Ishtiaq and Mufti Saab and the sisters have mentioned in this program so far. I mean, just coming back to to you in terms of education. I mean, you work with young people. I'm not sure what age group you work with.
Secondary.
And secondary school. But is there a sort of within the young people a zeal? We've seen young people go out in the street to campaign about climate change. And that's a huge issue that faces the whole of the world and the Ummah as well. And this is something that I don't think the Muslim community was really engaged with. But do young people, are they engaged with climate change issues, Extinction Rebellion, for example? Are they similarly engaged with politics of the country? Do you come across that?
Well, I do. I have a lot of discussions with my students, and they're always talking about it. But at the moment in time, all they say and do is, we can't be bothered because nobody's bothered. Why should we go and vote if the government can't be bothered to do anything for us? And we've got so many cuts, they won't let us do this. They won't provide anything for us. So why should we waste our vote? And I always say to them, well, your vote counts. If you don't vote for change, there will never be a change. But they don't seem to care anymore because they've lost that kind of hope that they had before. They've lost it. They've seen it from their parents coming down in generation. They just can't be bothered anymore. They just become disengaged.
There's a lot of apathy, isn't there?
Yeah,
There
they're
is.
disengaged.
I mean, Ishtiaq is a master of political analysis, I'm sure. And as I say, he's been there long before many of us were even thought about it. Do you think there's a deliberate attempt to create this apathy within communities, so that there's certain people who go out and vote?
I don't think it's deliberate, but I think it's a result of a combination of factors. And I earlier made a point about saying that we have not invested in our young people. They have not been nurtured in terms of actually their what I call political growth. And so there is no kind of like politicizing of young people at all going on. There's no work actually is taking place. Something. So there are young people that I know who said to me, look, they have never seen in the last 10 or 15 years any of their parents actually find employment. Okay, so if they haven't found that what chances have we got? Yeah. I was talking to the taxi driver the other day, and this taxi driver actually is graduated about 3 years ago. Okay, an excellent degree from university. Is doing a taxi driver. And I asked him. I said, why? He said, look, the only opportunity I could get was away from Bradford. Okay, and I got parents in Bradford, I got young sisters and brothers in Bradford. I don't want to live in Bradford, but there isn't anything for me in Bradford. Okay, something. So those are some of the things I think which actually, in many ways, make up people's mindsets and their attitudes, and they then get passed on something. So I think it's about time we invest in our young people.
And if they do get a job, it's zero contract.
Oh yeah, I mean.
And if they do get a job, the flexibility for the employer is still, the minimum wage. There's no prospect of having a decent wage, not the bare minimum that the government set, because there's no incentive for people.
I mean, there is a lot of issues around
progress
employment contracts at the moment, and I was talking to a white person yesterday.
But there was a very important point which Anaya made, and I want to come to it because I think that is that electing your members of parliament and your councillor is his first responsibility.
Absolutely.
But then
right,
holding them accountable.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stop you there for a minute. I think this issue about accountability is obviously absolutely vital. We're coming to another break. I hope you found the second part of this program really fascinating. When we come back, we want to talk about something that Ishtiaq has mentioned, which is how do we get our young people to get politically engaged? How do you nurture them in our communities? So don't go away. Inshallah we'll be back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.